Hi everyone, I'm really pleased to be here. And we're here today to talk about hybrid publishing models and about Promontory Press. So Ben, could you tell us a little bit about Promontory Press and about your background and why you started this hybrid publishing company?
Sure thing, Ricardo, and thanks for having me here today. It's a real pleasure. Well, Promontory Press and my version of hybrid publishing started in 2010. I was an author, and I was looking at the traditional industry, and I really didn't like the industry that I found. And it seemed to me that the traditional model, while it has many merits, certainly had real limitations to it. Not only for the author, but also for the publisher. It seemed a very silly business model for a publisher to take on. So when I set up Promontory, I had two ideas in mind. First is I wanted to be accessible to authors, because that is one of the big complaints you'll get from authors, is that you can't break into the traditional industry. I needed to find a way that I could make Promontory more accessible, especially to first-time authors.
Right.
And second, I just looked at the model and thought, this is a silly model. Let me describe what the traditional publishing model is from the publisher's side. So you're an author and you come to me, and basically it's, so I'm going to pay you a lot of money up front for your IP. Then I'm going to spend a lot of money to package that IP. Then I'm going to spend a lot of money to try and sell that IP to stores who may or may not take it. And when they do take it, they can still return it. I mean, it's a silly model. Anyone with a business degree will look at modern publishing and go, this is clearly a model that was developed a long time ago. So when I looked at developing Promontory, I looked at something different, and I decided to call it hybrid. Now, these days, Promontory does both traditional and hybrid publishing, but our hybrid model, which is what we're talking about today, is essentially this. It's an effort to reduce the financial risk on the publisher excuse me, so that I can take more chances on talented authors.
Right.
And so what I've done is I've worked out how much it costs for me to take a book to market. That includes all the production, includes the printing, the sales efforts, the marketing efforts, all the distribution. And I've worked it out so that an author, what I'm asking the author to do is chip in about 1/3 of the initial investment of that. Promontory pays the other 2/3. And then when it comes to printing, which is the single biggest cost, the author and the publisher share that cost 50-50. But in exchange for the author putting in that initial investment, the author keeps their rights, and the author, instead of getting 10% of revenue, which is standard for traditional, the author gets 50% of revenue. So the author approaches this as a business as well. They make their investment, which is about 1/3 of the costs, and they can look forward to getting half of the revenue back. And I find it works very well. We've published 42 books now, and we have 20 more in the hopper over the next year. And we've managed to refine and improve and build our distribution networks. So in effect, our hybrid books are published exactly the same way as a traditionally published book, because we do both. And the team at Promontory very often don't even know whether the book that we're working on is a hybrid or a traditional book, because beyond me, the publisher, the author, and the accountant, no one needs to know what kind of deal we've struck. We treat them exactly the same way. So in effect, it's traditional publishing, but it has allowed me to take risks on authors who deserve to have a risk taken on them, but I could never have made the business case under the purely traditional model.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting, and I think there's a great future for hybrid models like that, where the risk is split on both sides, and the revenues as well are split on both sides. And I mean, digital websites and platforms and publishing make that possible. But quite interestingly, your strong point at Promontory Press is not necessarily on the digital side of things, right? You're very good. You've developed your own print distribution network, which is fascinating for a new publishing company, relatively new.
That's right. Yeah, and the reason I did that, it's not because it's cheap or easy. I wish everything we did was electronic. It's so much easier. But In 2010, when I set up Promontory, there was still very much the perception that if you as an author were only e-published, then you weren't a real author. That there was a legitimacy question. And even now in 2015, it still exists.
Yeah.
If you can't get your book onto bookstore shelves, then really published. And so I made print distribution the holy grail for Promontory in the early years. We worked very, very hard to make sure that our distribution is as good as or better than any other traditional publisher. Of course, we still do ebooks, we do online selling. It's wonderful. It's so easy. That's certainly a big part of our business model, but we still make our most money by selling books to bookstores. And that, I think, is a real differentiator for us from most other small presses.
So if I'm an author and I want to be published by Promontory Press, I have to submit my book to you, right?
That's right.
Who looks at it? Do you have an editorial team? Who makes a decision?
Yep. All of the submissions, which can come via the website, we have our acquisitions editor look at them first. And if she thinks that the submission shows promise, she'll show it to our standards editor. And if they both agree, then it comes to me as the publisher to look at. And if all three of us agree that, yeah, this sample, this submission shows promise, then we'll ask for the full manuscript. And that's still not a guarantee that we're going to accept it, but we do guarantee that if we accept the full manuscript for review, we will give the author a report back detailing what's good about the book, what's not so good about the book. And if we're not going to make an offer, why, and what we recommend they do next.
All right. So the author has to bear, in the hybrid model, the author bears the cost of editing and design, right?
No, it's not quite that simple.
Right.
The way it works is we've just figured out how much it costs to take a book to market with all the costs. So It's not specifically editing or design, etc. We as the publisher will do all of that. And it's a good point you raise, because one of the biggest problems that can bedevil a self-published author is not having a good enough cover or not having good enough content with the editing. We learned long ago that we are the professionals, we are the ones who talk to national buyers at Barnes & Noble, etc. We know what the industry standards are. So the cover design, the interior design, all of that is handled by the publisher. The author has input, of course. We want the author to love their cover, but ultimately we don't take the author's designs and we don't expect the author to go find an artist. We have staff on board to do all that to make sure that the book has the best chance of succeeding.
That's really interesting. And what kind of genres do you work on? Did you start with certain genres? You mentioned that like this hybrid model allows you to take chances on niche authors, which is really interesting right now. I mean, I love genre blending and niche writing. But do you do every kind of niche, or?
We do, yeah. One of the big ideas when I set up Promontory was that I wanted to be accessible to any kind of author. So I don't take hate literature and I don't take pornography, but otherwise, any kind of book is welcome to be submitted to Promontory. We have a wide range of genres, both fiction and nonfiction, that we've published. Anything from thrillers and mysteries to science fiction to romance to literary fiction. And then on nonfiction, we do Mind, Body, Spirit, we do Christian books, we do travel books, humor. Surprise me, really, is what I say to an author. Bring me something I've never seen. And if it's really, really good, then I want to be the one to give it a shot.
That's great. You're one of the very few publishers to say that, I believe, in the world. Of course, when the author has to make an investment up front, it all becomes about your ability as a publisher to sell the book afterwards. So what do you do in terms of marketing on top of your distribution to sell the book?
Yeah, a lot of marketing actually starts about 9 months before the book launches. We want to have the book ready to go so that we can get it out to advanced trade reviews, to Kirkus, Chanticleer, Forward, Publishers Weekly, any relevant magazines that the book might be featured in because of the genre. We want to have those reviews back before we even pitch the bookstore buyers, so that we have a greater chance of proving to the buyers how awesome our book is. Plus, those trade reviews tend to set the tone for other reviews, for consumer reviews. They're going to start talking about on Amazon. We will also start the author on their own online campaign. And the author has to be part of this. The author has to build his or her presence, and we'll train the author if they don't know how to do this. About 6 months prior to start building their presence, and about 3 months before launch, we will start doing promo, like 20% off if you pre-order now. And we'll start driving pre-orders. We'll start getting the author on blog tours, doing interviews with relevant media. Most of it we do online because it has the farthest reach. But if there's a brick and mortar newspaper or radio station that we can score for the author, that's great. We'll do that too. And this all happens before the book even launches. And then once the book launches, we may have an event, we may not. It depends on the circumstances. And then we continue to engage with the public, with the target market. So both the author and the Promontory staff will continue to get word of the book out to people who enjoy it. We continue to highlight reviews that we get to encourage people to give reviews. And at that point, the marketing continues on in much the same way that it would for any self-published author. And it's engagement by the author. It's us reaching out to people. One of the advantages we have as a publisher is that we can often get access to media that a single author wouldn't be able to get. Most of that happens before launch, but it can continue to happen after launch as well, depending on how the book is going.
Yeah, you make a very good point in that, is that when you curate your list and offer a certain stamp of quality, and that really helps with the media, because in self-publishing, where you're just one self-published author among hundreds of thousands of other self-published authors, and there's nothing differentiating you from them. So that's the quality of a publisher. So you have like a PR team or a marketing team that works with the authors, right?
That's right, yeah. We have an in-house marketing team that is specializing in working with the author, and then we engage publicists. We have 2 of them in New York who've been in New York for forever, know everybody, can make those calls and can make that happen for us.
Right.
So definitely, we've learned the importance of the long lead. It's everything in publishing.
And you take care of all marketing costs, basically. So if you're going to hire,
yes, it's all part of the investment that we've already planned for.
Right.
That's right.
Excellent. No, that's fascinating deal. We might generalize this and try to see a little bit in the future, because to me this hybrid model makes a lot of sense. Are there any other hybrid publishers that you know of in the US or in the UK even? And how do you see that hybrid model going forwards?
There are a few others. There are 3 others that I know of. There's one based in California called She Writes Press, and their model is very similar to Promontory's. They specialize in women writers only, but that's their sort of specialization. There's another one called BQB, and their model is a little different from ours, but it's variation on a theme. And there's a third one called Booktrope, which has quite a unique model where nobody pays anything up front. And when the book sells, the author, the editor, the cover designer, all the different players, then they get paid. So it's different again. But the key is that what makes us hybrid as opposed to vanity press or self-publishing, that there are people who think that as soon as an author pays, it's vanity press.
Yeah.
Is that all 4 of us, we make our money by selling books. We don't make our money by fees that authors pay us. And that's the line that I draw in the sand. If a publisher makes its money from author fees and doesn't care how many books are sold, then it's self-publishing. If the author is invested in selling the book and making it a success, then it's hybrid. And I think that the details of how we split that investment with the author can vary, and there's certainly a spectrum of hybrid. But essentially, we're all trying to do the same thing, because we're trying to produce curated, high-quality books by high-quality authors who wouldn't otherwise have had a chance.
Exactly, and I think that's an excellent definition of hybrid, and that's also something that REIT is going to go into in a few months, because we really believe in giving new authors a chance, as you do. And we also believe as a technology company in sustainable business models and scalable ones. Thank you very much for being with us today, Ben, and for explaining a little bit how Promontory Press works, how hybrid publishing can be maybe a way to go forward with publishing if the other ways fail, or fail to, well, attract new authors. And we'll certainly keep in touch and talk more about hybrid publishing on the REITC blog.
Thank you very much, Ricardo. It's been my pleasure.